Great. So, welcome everybody, and really delighted to welcome the panel this afternoon, because it's now 12 o'clock. We're going to start with brief introductions to this session, and the overall objectives of this panel is to provide a bit of an overview of what sustainability challenges publishers are facing and will face in the future. So we really hope that some interesting comments will be made and some experiences from all the panel's current work. And we're looking at what examples of changes publishers have made to improve sustainability, and also best practice around sustainability in publishing. So really looking forward to a very interesting session. There will be an opportunity at the end for anyone in the audience to ask some questions. But we have very strict timing, so I will do my best to keep us all on track. Just to do introductions, so I'm Rosie Glazebrook. I'm the chair of PLS, and really delighted to welcome you all today to an excellent whole day of interesting talks and activities. So I'm going to ask Helen to introduce herself first.
Yeah, hi, I'm Helen Griggs, the Global Director for Procurement and Environment for Cambridge University Press and Assessment, and I've been in the press and assessment for 8 years now and been driving the environmental and sustainability growth and challenge for the last 4 years.
Welcome.
Thank
Courtney.
you.
Hi, I'm Courtney Ward-Hunting. I've been at Penguin Random House UK for just over 3 years, leading sustainability and social impact within the supply chain. And before that, I worked at ASOS and fashion, so a very different beast when it comes to sustainability.
And Stuart.
Hi, I'm Stuart. I'm the creative director of SRL Publishing. We are a very young, newish publisher, only really a few years old, but really changing and challenging the industry in terms of sustainability. Before that, I did retail and hospitality and moved into publishing.
Excellent. Well, welcome to all our panel. And we're going to start with you, Stuart, actually, with some, maybe you could say a little bit about what made you start SRL Publishing and take on sustainability as a publisher, and why it's become such an emergent industry issue.
Oh, tricky. So SRL Publishing was started about 10 years ago now. It was originally a magazine, and I was going to give it up because of my retail career was too challenging. So, and then a friend said to me, "Oh, I've written a book." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll close down the magazine, but I'll publish it for you." In terms of sustainability, we started about 4 years ago, I think. We originally published a book that was about deforestation, a children's picture book. And we teamed up with Rainforest Trust, and we donated all of our profits into one of their projects that they've got. And we happened to save around 500,000 trees from deforestation at the time. And then we started thinking about not just saving trees, but replacing the ones that we use for our products, because obviously books are made from paper, which paper comes from trees. And then in June 2020, we became a climate positive publisher, the world's first. And at the time, for a couple of years, was the world's only climate positive publisher, but there's quite a few now that are emerging. Why do I think it's such an emergent issue at the moment? I don't know. No idea. It should be, and it should have been for quite some time. And it's good to see now that the major conferences, such as the book fairs and conferences like this, are highlighting sustainability as a not just something at the back to fill up the stage space, but as a main theme of what it's all about. But hopefully, going forward, sustainability will become a much more bigger thing that's talked about.
Great, thank you. And just a quick follow-up question for you, Stuart. What do you think are the most common misconceptions when you're looking at your, how you've approached it from?
The main one, I think, from all walks of life within the industry is that you can't, this isn't obviously what I think, but a misconception is that you can't be profitable as well as sustainable. I think a lot of publishers and a lot of people in the industry maybe think that it has to be one or the other. You're either sustainable or you're profitable, but we're out there proving that, yeah, your margins are a lot tighter and a lot smaller, but you can still be profitable and you can still make a difference and you can still make a change. That's what I think it is anyway.
Thanks very much indeed. Great to kick off with those thoughts. And Helen, what do you think has been the biggest change in the industry over the past 5 years or so? Anything you want to say about that?
Well, I guess for me, over the last 5 to 8 years, it's just having the conversation. 5 years ago, from a procurement perspective, I wasn't even thinking about how to move our products more environmentally friendly, talking to the freight forwarders. We've always been using a company called Bookchain to help with the papers to make sure they're sustainable. But again, it wasn't a big conversation. But now in every forum we're talking to, it's there, whether it be the PA, in the PLS. And it's coming not just from, you know, my team in the environment, but it's coming from the ground up, from like everybody, from the editors to the licensees to the authors. And I think just the whole supply chain's talking about it. And that's the biggest thing I've found.
And anything you'd say about misconceptions and, you know, aside from the profitability one, any other, you know?
I think some people think it's really easy to do, and I think just because of the length of some of the supply chains we are operating in as publishers, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, we're going to get this paper and not come from a deforested source. It is thinking about the content you have on your systems. It's thinking about how you move the product, how your paper's being moved to your printer, for example. Also going digital, you know, is that actually more environmentally friendly? So I think there's some big misconceptions there that we're all working through at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed. And Courtney, you know, what kind of challenges have you encountered, you know, so far in your role?
A lot. I think sustainability, as my panel said, like, it's really complex and it's multifaceted. So it isn't just climate change, it's also biodiversity loss, it's circular economy, it's reducing your single-use plastics, and it's also social impact. So looking at the workers in your supply chain and how they're impacted by what you do as a publisher. So there's so many issues, and also in a sustainability team, up until last year, there was just me, and there was about 500 to 600 colleagues that I needed to engage and train on sustainability, because they are the ones that have the influence to really create change. So it didn't make sense me telling them what to do. It made sense me showcasing what was best and what was out there. So one of the things that I did was created a sustainability production toolkit, and that's created challenges in itself, because now everyone is more aware and informed on our paper's carbon impact, the circularity of our books. So I get a lot more questions. I get a lot more people coming to me and asking, what does this mean and what does that do? And also, I think what's created the change most is behaviour. So we've actually driven down our carbon impact in our supply chain this year for the first time in the last few years. So there's different challenges to it, because also when you talk about carbon impact and circularity, sometimes they don't mix. So if you go for carton paper for transport or carton boxes, that has heavier carbon, but is part of the circular system. Whereas if you look at plastic shrink wrapping, that is less carbon, but also doesn't go into circular economy. So you also have to find the trade-offs. So yeah, it's really important that you have a focus and you engage and educate others on sustainability.
Thanks very much. And have you changed any of your policies to keep up with these ambitions?
Yeah, we've added policies, and we've also added in specific KPIs for colleagues. So certain things that we do now is we actually have a cap on high carbon papers because we have the data. So we rolled that out last year. We've also removed glitter as well in 2020. We only source FSC certified paper, but then we're also looking at biodiversity as well, because we know that FSC is just a foundation, so we want to take that further. And we also have a carbon impact report, which again keeps us accountable. And I think that's one of the biggest things as a publisher, is to be accountable when it comes to sustainability, and to note when you make an impact, but also note how you're going to change that as well.
Thank you very much indeed. And back to Stuart, I mean, what do you think the biggest challenges facing, publishing at the moment around sustainability? If you were to, really look at which obstacles are really preventing progress here?
I would say that the information out there, if you're just starting your sustainability journey and you're not as clued up as you would like to be on all things sustainability in terms of scope 1, 2 and 3 and all that sort of stuff, I guess for me, we're all obviously members of the PA, join the PA because they've released a carbon calculator, so that would really help if you're just starting your journey in terms of calculating. But Another thing as well I would say is that you can't just throw money at it. You can invest money into all this sort of stuff, but as long as you know what you're talking about and you know why you're putting money into, say, you know, lowering your plastic or no glitter or planting trees or carbon removal projects, you need to know your figures and not just throw money at it thinking the issue will go away, because the issue isn't going away. It's going to be here for quite some time.
Thank you. And anything you'd like to say, Helen, around the, you know, the biggest challenge? You mentioned a number of different parts of the, you know, the supply chain and the complexity of that. Where do you think the biggest challenges are, and how are you looking at tackling those?
I think for me at the Cambridge University Press and Assessment at the moment, it's really the challenge of the suppliers that we're engaging with and the third parties, and getting them to come on board with what we want to do as a publisher. The biggest area of challenge for myself, because we're a global publisher and printer, is the global supply chain and then the freight forwarders. And that industry is not moving fast enough at the moment. So, you know, DHL and Kuehne + Nagel, who might be moving your products, are not going as fast with getting greener fuels or getting, you know, batteries on boats, for example. I mean, that technology is going to take 10 years to come. So that's the biggest challenge I'm finding. And that, for me, when we're talking scope 3 with the greenhouse gas process, is the biggest lever that we've got, and we need to work with those to drive the change for all of us in publishing.
Thanks very much. Courtney, anything you'd like to say about the, you know, the biggest kind of challenges and how you're, you know, on top of what you said just now?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's lots of different challenges, and I think the good thing about sustainability is ever evolving. So there are always good challenges to have, and I think it's good to maybe not see it as a challenge, but see it as an opportunity. So you do have challenges that you can't fix straight away, but then you can put in actions that might help mitigate that. So if we talk about, for us, a challenge would be our scope 3 emissions. Out of that, papers, printers, and transport, to and both from them, is around 85% of our total emissions when we specifically look at climate change. So as I mentioned, we've done a cap on paper impact. We're also rolling out tailored action plans for our suppliers, so our printers, to try and get them to encourage them to think about climate change and sustainability, but also use it that's adapted to them. So they're in different countries, they'll have different capabilities, different legislation impacts. So looking at, you know, green energy for Europe, but then for China, think about where they could use less processes and what they could do to impact it, and if they could get green certification elsewhere. And there's also things like train travel and using rail freight instead of trucks when you're in Europe as well. So these are all things that we're looking to develop and getting really excited by as well.
Thanks very much indeed. And I suppose it would be really good just to hear a little bit about where you've made the most impact so far in, you know, some of the changes that you've made. If you know, any particular things where you think that's made a really big impact, and how you've communicated that with your colleagues would be good to hear about.
Yeah, so we launched a book last year. It was in the Vintage Earth series, and actually I worked really closely with the production teams to make that a really low carbon, low nature impact book. So everything was either like recycled board, or it was our lowest mono virgin paper that we used. We used vegetable inks. We also didn't use a lamination or on the cover, so it could be recycled as well. And that was a conscious choice. And we also had, for the first time, a bit on the end book of the bit to talk about our actions and why we've done it and why it was important to us. And that was kind of almost the pilot to now something that is being processed for a lot of different books at Penguin. So we were really happy about that. And that book's impact, or carbon impact, was, I think, like 80% lower than a traditional book's carbon impact at Penguin. So that was something really tangible that we could showcase to colleagues, that actually it costs less because we use less. So
excellent. And is there anything that you're receiving sort of feedback from customers around, what they're looking for in this whole process?
I think it's difficult because for publishers, I don't think we communicate very well what we're doing externally. We do a lot internally, we do a lot engaging, but we don't really promote that. So I think that's what we need to do more of. So I've not heard too much from customers. I get the odd email being like, why do you still print in China, and things like this. So it's very much having to educate consumers as well. So we actually have a sustainability hub, which is a safe space for consumers to think about climate change and to read anything from green finance to a David Attenborough book, for example. So we do try and educate them, but we need to do more of that.
Thank you very much. And back to Helen. What do you think you know where at CUP have you made the most impact? Because you obviously have done a whole number of different activities. Where do you think the real impact is coming?
I think for me, the biggest impact is really getting kind of the grassroots conversations that started 5 years ago into fruition. So, for example, doing something really small, like we've got an allotment on our grounds, and we're fortunate we've got some grounds in Cambridge, but it was a ground-up idea, and it's now there, and everyone can go there, and it's great for the well-being, but also for the environment. But I think, again, it's just that listening to our colleagues, and we're in the education space and the academic space, so we get a lot of feedback from there's teachers and schools and learners, etc. So about what they want, and then just taking those and then growing them into what we can become as a press and assessment organisation.
And any particular feedback that you've acted on that you've been particularly proud of, where they've come up with ideas that you might not have?
For us, it's been really about, with a lot of our students and learners, since COVID, it's about digitalisation. So a lot of them are into more on the digital landscape now. So it's getting some of our books, and some of our academic books, for example, are quite intense and heavy onto the digital platform, and we're taking that on board on how we can do more of that and flexible. So we've got both options, because people still want to have a physical book, but we've got that option. So I think that's one that's really come through for us.
Excellent. And just moving on, if you were starting out on the journey, Stuart, you mentioned this at the start, what advice would you be giving to publishers who are just starting out on the sustainability journey? And, where would you start on this one?
What advice would I give to someone starting on their journey? I guess for me it would be to be honest. If you're doing something not quite the right way, don't try to cover it up, just be completely honest. As I said earlier, you've got associations like the PA, the Publishers Association, the Independent Publishers Guild, who have got a wealth of information of not just for those who are already on their journey like we are, but those who are just starting out. And don't be afraid to contact other people in the industry for a bit of support. Don't be shy, and don't, it's all right to ask for help, and we're more than happy to help people.
And when you were starting out on your journey of, those years ago, what was the, what gave you the most sort of, sense of success when you first started out?
Well, we didn't set out to be climate positive. It was just something that happened. The more we looked into, the returns that are wasted and thrown in the bin, and the overprinting, which is a massive issue, and everything else that we've all talked about today. I guess for us, it was when we started releasing our impact reports online. We've released our second, and our first one was released last year. And not only do we go through the details of how we've worked out that we are climate positive, it proves that we are. And we also put in there information about how to help other people. And I think you mentioned as well that we don't communicate that as much as we do externally as we do internally. But we've got a bit, like you said, we've got a bit at the back of our books to say what we're doing and the reasons why, and where they can get more information from, just if they want to look more into it.
That's great. And so you mentioned your yearly impact report, and you've done a number of carbon offset projects, and how do you choose which ones?
So the ones we choose are highly verified projects around the world that don't just reduce the carbon and remove the carbon from the atmosphere. We choose them because they also contribute to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And last year, I think we'd put towards all of them apart from one, unfortunately. The year before, it was all of them. But yeah, that's the reason why, mainly why. They're highly verified, and they are only chosen because they were verified by massive organisations.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And I suppose the next part is really looking forward. There's lots of work in progress, and over the next few years, what do you think your main goals are in promoting sustainability? I mean, do you want to start off?
Well, for us, it is going to be more about the sharing of data across all of our organisations, the publishers, examiners, to drive a change in the industry, and that's part of the PA, which us three are already part of. are trying to do in the industry. And I think, again, looking at things you can control and then driving that change there as well.
Sure. Courtney, comments you'd make on that same question. So, you know, what in the next few years, what would be the main goals?
Yeah, similar to Helen, I think as well, the SDG Publisher Compact is really interesting because they're looking at how you would promote, you know, climate change on a book, and it's almost like an ingredient list, you know, the more climate change or more carbon impact, the redder it is. So I think it's joining up to initiatives like that, seeing how we can promote it on the product, but also that really relies on data, so making sure that sustainability, isn't a competition, it's shared by all, and making sure we've all got the same data, so we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, as they say. So I think that's really important, and also internally educating staff and senior leadership teams so they're aware of not only the issues and challenges around climate change, but how to action them and what legislation and regulations are incoming that are really going to make loads of difference for us as publishers.
Thank you very much. And Stuart, anything you would sort of comment on looking at the next few years?
I hope we're in a better place, actually. As we said at the start of this, the conversation around the environment and sustainability is growing ever more, and we need to keep it in the focus. We can't talk about it and then it, you know, we've all been there where we worked for major companies where something is highlighted, whether it's environment or diversity or anything else, and then a couple of weeks later it's forgotten about because something else is in the main frame. We need to keep sustainability at the front of it. I hope that, you know, we don't want to be the only carbon positive or climate positive publisher. We hope that more and more, there are a couple more that have joined us, but we do hope that a lot more publishers are moving to that and a lot more are moving to net zero. It's positive, I hope.
Thank you very much indeed. And just to sort of finish up this section, I mean, any one tip or takeaway that you would give to the, you know, the publishers in the audience today about, you know, what we've just been discussing before we have questions?
Sure. I think for me it's really just look at what you can control and don't try to do everything, because when you start to look at the sustainability landscape, there's so much you can do. Just work on the things you know you can control within your organisation and just start small and then just build it up.
So not worrying about the shipping.
Everything. No, don't worry about everything, because it's just too much. Yeah, absolutely, especially for the smaller publishers, definitely.
And Courtney?
I would say start getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, because I think the more that we challenge ourselves, the more that we don't back away from it, I think the more we hold ourselves accountable and we become more acclimatized to accept, you know, we have to be accountable for our actions, and this doesn't just affect us, it affects everybody here. So, you know, start thinking about that with mind and thinking of it as an opportunity rather than challenge.
Stuart?
Sorry.
No, I think these two pretty much summed up what I was going to say. So nothing else.
Going last.
The only thing, I know, thank God for that. The only thing I would add is that it can be done. As you said, it is a challenge, and don't be afraid to step out of your boundaries, and don't be afraid to learn what you might not want to learn about. And I think from me, the main thing I would say is that you can be both sustainable in terms of profit and environment. It can be done. That's it.
Well, thank you so much to the panel, and for lots of really good examples of, you know, in each of your day-to-day roles, how you're, you know, putting into practice such important changes, and also, you know, tips on how, whether it's toolkits or educating colleagues, and how looking at the whole supply chain journey. I think there's a number of elements here that will be really useful for those in the audience to take away. It'd be great to get some questions, and we've got some roving mics, I'm hoping, somewhere. And who would like to start with a question? A gentleman here with... Thank you. Great. Just the gentleman just here, third row.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And if you would like to just introduce yourself, so
yeah, sure.
name your
Mohammed Bulmadani, Maghreb Review, London. It is a shame that we didn't have a printer on the panel to tell us the material is using. Personally, I use one of the best printers in the United Kingdom, and he only uses the material sustainable material. What I want to ask the panel is what control do you have over the printers you are using, that they are using good quality sustainable papers?
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Who'd like to go
I was
first?
going to say, Cambridge. Oh, sorry, I thought it was there. Sorry. So Cambridge contract with a company. Is it not working anymore? We use a company called Carnstone, and it's a book chain organisation, and they have a database of all the papers that we ask our printers to use, and they have to use PREPS 3-star or 5-star or FSC, and we control all the papers the printers use through that to then make sure that we can be audited, and that's how we manage what the printers use. And if they don't use those papers, they're not on the list, we don't take that product from them.
Thank you very much. Anything you'd like to add?
No, yes, well, same, and they're all 100% FSC certified. That's an absolute foundation for us and a must. We don't do anything that isn't. And second, as I mentioned, we have the reduction caps on high carbon papers, so we've rolled that to our printers now so they know which papers they can get from us and which ones they can't on behalf of us.
Stuart?
Nothing much to add to that, to be fair. We do pretty much the same as these two. But we don't print in the Far East. We print in Australia, we print in the UK, and we print in America. And in a couple of weeks' time, we can now print in Sharjah for those areas. But yeah, we print in the UK as well.
And do you have so you have an agreed list of suppliers?
Pretty much, yeah. Because we're not a massive publisher, it's harder for the smaller publishers to control what their printers are doing. You just need to work alongside them to make sure that you're both sort of working towards the same level. Nothing's perfect, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but as long as you're making tracks in the right direction, then that's all you can do, really.
Good. Thank you for that question.
Do you print the information of papers you use on your books?
Yes, yeah, we do. And I think we have a list somewhere as well. It's the first time for us for a policy that we've launched on our modern slavery statement. We've also listed the paper brands and the paper mills and the countries where they source from as well. That's on our website.
Great. Who else has a question? Oh, gentleman here.
Hi, Jonathan Whitehead from Haymarket. We're predominantly a digital publisher, and I know you touched on that topic, but how do you account for digital in sustainability?
Who'd like to go? Do you want to go first?
At the moment, we're just starting that journey, to be honest. We're really struggling with what is the end of the digital sort of journey, whether it be you use your laptop or if somebody's got an iPhone, and it's what is the impact of that space, how many times you download the content. So we're just on that journey. We've got, again, another company we're contracting with called Dimpact that we're going to hopefully launch and share with all the publishers soon. That will help with some of that understanding. But yeah, we've just started on that journey. So.
Do you want to say anything, Courtney?
Yeah, we're the same. So we're looking at Dimpact as well, it's quite a new concept because, as Helen said, yeah, digital data kind of has a long line, and it's not just. It seems easy, but it's not, and also it's not just about digital products, it's about emails and it's about your servers that you use as well and your website. So there's many different factors, again, when we look at digital, but it's something we want to do as well.
Stuart, any comments?
Yeah, we're different, actually, for the first time. So we actually measure our carbon emissions via digital. In terms of digital books, and you've touched upon that, the download, again, it's how far do you go down the supply chain? Do you go to the end customer? Because the end customer's obviously got their devices that they use to re-download and read as many times. But additionally to that, we do measure our digital emissions in terms of the bandwidth on our website and our email. But trying to get information out of retailers like Amazon and Barnes & Noble on your digital products is near impossible. It's not impossible, it is going to be difficult, but we are trying to get the figures from them so we can then work out the impact of a digital product against a more physical product.
Thanks very much. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Oh, yes. And then here.
Hi there, Julie Atkins, Bristol University Press. We set up our first sustainability objective 25 years ago, and we're still working on it day by day. One of the things a lot of publishers have been accused of is greenwashing, claiming that they're sustainable because they're using the right paper, while simultaneously sending their globe-hopping sales and editorial teams all over the world on planes and racking up a huge carbon footprint. How do you get the buy-in from your sort of sales and editorial team to be part of that sustainability drive, and how do you react to people who are saying it's all driven by production, what's the rest of your business doing?
Thank you. I'm going to start with Stuart this time. So,
Hi, Julie. So we'd be different because we don't have a massive team. It was a very small team at SRL. But again, like you said, with flying around the world, going to all these different international book fairs, for me, I guess it's finding the balance between keeping your business going, because you obviously need to remain somewhat profitable, but yet still being environmentally sustainable. There is a bit of a more uprising of hybrid events. There's something called the Green Book Fair that has just launched that is literally online only, so you can start to do both. And I think, just to add quickly as well, if we're thinking about the international book fairs, I think they need to, during COVID, they went fully online. I think they need to keep that as well as in-house. So people who, like yourselves, might not want to travel all around the world, generating emissions, they can still attend fairs online and still not miss out.
Courtney.
Yeah, I think it's right. I think there should be a balance. I think there's incentives as well that you can do for colleagues to travel in a greener way. So instead of them getting a flight to Frankfurt, it could be a train. And again, maybe either upgrade them to first class or allow them to work, give them some time in lieu. There's things that you can definitely do to promote that. The difficulty that we have is the data, because all the data is carbon impact. And if I go on that alone, my supply chain is still 95% of my emissions, and colleagues travelling is maybe 2 to 3%. So they'll just look at that and go, well, you should focus on supply chain. But then this is where the toolkit comes in handy and where behaviour change comes in handy. So, making sure that you're training and educating your colleagues to not think about just work, but also think about their life. Like WWF have a carbon impact footprint, so you can measure your footprint yearly, which is something really cool, and I've actually done that with quite a few of my colleagues, and they've been a bit scared at first, but then they've understood where their carbon impact is coming from. So I think doing things like that.
Any comment from you, Helen?
I think the only addition I'll have is that from a publishing house, it's the travel policy we've launched to think more greener, and again, it's the cultural change. It has been stereotypical in some of our academic areas to always travel. The sales colleagues always travel, but again, it's like Courtney said, it is about how to travel, thinking about the train. Could you get a train here, to London today rather than drive somewhere, etc., etc. So it's all about that. And I think, again, to the exhibitions, I think I found a change with the marketing colleagues now. They're not getting as many freebies, you're not getting as many free pens and post-its, or if they are, they're more sustainable, of sustainable products. So I think, again, it's that behavioural change that we're seeing. And it's slow, to be honest. So
great. And we've got time for one more question, and just here in the front.
Thank you very much. My name is Fabian Ukebu, representing New Era Dimensions Press. I did not think that I will meet here today, but I'm very, very grateful for how you presented it. But my concern is 1992, we met at Rio de Janeiro, where we talked of environmental sustainability and who pays for it. I wrote a project on this 2008. And since then, there have been so many Platonian approach to it. Platonian, as you know, is one who takes a subject from the artificial intelligence than the humanistic approach, because when you think of what we are treating, we plant the trees, we do whatever we want by addressing physical materials. But as one who traced his genealogy back to 874th year of man on earth, the problem is with humans. How can we address ourselves to achieve harmony among ourselves before what is affecting us.
Thank you. Well, I think that it's a question that we probably won't answer before lunch.
But a very good
But
one.
a very good question, and I think one of the really helpful parts of the last half an hour has really been the examples of real life changes that some of the publishers that we have here today are able to demonstrate, because it is a huge existential issue that touches everyone's lives. But I think it's also, as I think Helen, you said, a short while ago, it's what can we control and do something about ourselves. It's having toolkits, it's having best practice, and it's encouraging our colleagues to change the way that they're doing things in the workplace, which of course may have an impact as well outside work. And I think having best practice and looking at ways of what we can control is the first steps in this journey. Any final comments from the panel?
From me, I completely agree with you. Humans are the problem, but we can also be the solution as well.
Yeah, I think not be so short-sighted is the issues with human. If we don't see it, if it's not in our bubble, we don't think about it. We need to think about this in affecting everybody. So absolutely.
Anything you would like to?
I think, again, some of this comes down to how we just educate and communicate, and also start to, as publishers, communicate externally what we're doing as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much, firstly, to the panel for their thoughts and contributions. It's hugely appreciated. I'm sure this will, this discussion will be on our agenda as a central part of it every year. And thank you very much to the, to all of you in the audience and for your questions. I think it's been a really productive and interesting session, and I'm delighted now we're breaking for lunch, so hopefully it's an environmentally friendly lunch, but look forward to seeing you all outside in the atrium area where lunch will be served. So thank you very much.